A very good evening and welcome to this Thursday night's edition of Primetime News. I'm Salima Shimwe-Feleni. Leading this evening's bulletin, the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, Wamkele Mene, has congratulated Namibia on its infrastructure development, saying it is the pathway to trade facilitation with other African countries. Mene's remarks followed a courtesy visit to President Dr. Hage Geingob at State House today as part of his first visit to Namibia since being sworn in as Secretary General in March 2020.
Now the African continent has an opportunity to take the next step, which is market integration of the continent. The political integration has been largely successful over the last 5-6 decades. Now we have an opportunity to accelerate our market integration. And at the core of that has to be the industrialization of our continent. We can no longer continue to keep ourselves in what I refer to as a colonial economic model, where we provide primary commodities to the European Union, to the Americans, the Chinese, and so on, and yet we don't industrialize. And so through the AFCFTA, we have a unique opportunity for Africa's industrial development and to accelerate Africa's industrial development.
The Affirmative Repositioning AR movement said it will be monitoring the work of the Office of the Prosecutor General and the Anti-Corruption Commission and await the arrest of former Defense Minister Hafeni Peter Vilo. If it does not happen, the movement will consider conducting private prosecution. The movement spokesperson, Simon Amunime, said this in a media statement issued Wednesday while reacting to the resignation of Vilo as the Minister of Defense and Veteran Affairs. Vilo resigned on Tuesday after having a meeting with President Dr. Hage Geingob to explain an undeclared bank account in a foreign country registered in his name. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, said that her ministry has done its part in bringing the 32-year-old Christofina Amutenya, ex-wife of a Namibian diplomat in Ethiopia, who allegedly murdered her 2 children and attempted to kill a 3rd child in December 2020 and was arrested by Ethiopian authorities without being charged. She said her ministry has been working in close consultation with the receiving state's Ministry of Foreign Affairs to facilitate Amutenya's return under the escort of the receiving state police.
I have to inform you that when we fully understand the extent for the case in point, in requesting or in waiving diplomatic status, there are many factors that we look at. One, whether in the country where the diplomatic facility is, you have an extradition treaty with that particular country. Second, you have also to see whether there are serious constitutional issues in as far as the national constitution is concerned when it comes to such incidents. For example, is there death penalty in that particular country? Now, depends now how you find it. You might decide not to ask to waiver diplomatic immunity so that you could only ask the person to be held in safe custody while you work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or International Relations in that particular country so that the person can be handled within the laws of Namibia in which territory the incident has taken place. And that is really the situation where we are. All the arrangements were made. MIRCO's responsibility is to make those consultations, working with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the receiving state, and a Namibian was finally, under the escort of the receiving state police, arrived in our country. And all the statements were handed over to the Namibian police, who have then taken charge of the person at the airport. But finally, we were informed as the ministry that the charges are withdrawn, and that's where I leave the case when I say it's complicated. So let the Namibian laws now take its course, which the Minister of International Relations is not really much convincing on that, but we have done our part in bringing the Namibian home, who unfortunately find herself in that situation.
Still on Amotenya, the state is awaiting advice from the Attorney General on the way forward regarding the case of Christophina Amotenya, accused of killing her 2 children in Ethiopia and whose case was temporarily withdrawn from court. Amotenya was on Monday brought back to Namibia, where she appeared in the Windhoek Magistrates Court on double murder charges and 1 charge of attempted murder. The charges were on Wednesday temporarily withdrawn, and she has since been released from custody. We will be back shortly after the news roundup. Prime Minister Sarah Kuhongerwa Amadila in the National Assembly on Wednesday said that the government's commitment to fight corruption is unquestionable. She said this commitment is evident in robust laws and institutions established to fight corruption and enforce accountability and effective governance in the country.
The commitment of our government to fight corruption is unquestionable. This commitment is evident in robust laws, systems and institutions established to deal with corruption and enforce accountability and effective governance in the country. The governance institutions and systems are properly functioning, and the autonomy of the courts and the watchdog institutions are fully respected. The unearthing and prosecution of the corruption cases are a result of the measures adopted by government to tackle corruption, including enactment of the Anti-Corruption Act, Whistleblowers Act and Witness Protection Act. The reporting of suspected corruption incidents is indicative of the public confidence in government's commitment to fight corruption and the effectiveness of the governance system in dealing with such cases. Under the leadership of our President, an anti-corruption strategy and action plan was adopted to cover the period 2016 to 2019 to promote systems of integrity, accountability and transparency across all spheres of society and to strengthen domestic anti-corruption systems inclusive of legislation, policies and institutions. The Anti-Corruption Strategy and Action Plan, which was tabled in the National Assembly, provides a holistic and integrative national anti-corruption plan, which mandates all stakeholders to proactively participate in the prevention and fight against corruption. In evaluation of the implementation of the strategy, indicated commendable progress in meeting the agreed strategic objectives as follows: the increasing the level of political accountability. The Electoral Commission of Namibia issued regulations relating to the declaration of assets and liabilities, disclosure of foreign and domestic financing of political parties, organizations, or other persons in line with Section 139 to 142 of the Electoral Act. The regulations were gazetted in November of 2019. On preventing corruption in offices, ministries and agencies and public enterprises, the ACC conducted pilot corruption risk assessments in 3 public institutions, and monitoring of corruption risk assessment mitigation plans were undertaken at various border posts. To enhance transparency and integrity in public enterprises, Cabinet approved a comprehensive manual on policy framework, principles and directives, including those guiding the remuneration of boards, directors, chief executive officers, and senior managers of public enterprises. The Public Enterprises Governance Act was also enacted. Actions were also implemented under this strategy aimed at supporting reform of public procurement system.
Pope Francis has told world financial chiefs that poor countries hit by the economic impact of the coronavirus need to have their debt burden reduced and be given a greater say in global decision-making. In a letter to the participants of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank's annual spring meeting, the Pope said the pandemic had forced the world to come to terms with interrelated socio-economic, ecological, and political crisis. The notion of recovery cannot be content to a return to an unequal and unsustainable model of economic and social life where a tiny minority of the world's population owns half of its wealth, the pontiff said in the letter dated April 4. The Economics Roundup is up next. I'll be sitting in for Shalva Wells for tonight's sports update. We kick off locally. Namibia's senior national women's side, the Brave Gladiators, got the better of their Angolan counterparts in the first of their two international friendlies at the Sam Nujoma Stadium on Wednesday. Namibia, who usually find the going hard when facing Angola, were on fire as they scored 4 goals past their neighbours in a match that only had a few government officials watching but no spectators due to COVID-19 regulations. Gladiators coach Robert Nauseb said he was happy that his team implemented their plan very well, but the scoreline was not a true reflection of the match. The two nations are using these friendly matches as preparation for the upcoming African Nations Cup qualifiers. This year's French Open has been postponed by a week due to the COVID-19 pandemic and will begin on the 30th of May, the French Tennis Federation said this today. The clay court Grand Slam, which was postponed by 4 months last year and took place in front of limited crowds, will finish on 13th June, 2 weeks before the expected start of Wimbledon. The grass court Grand Slam said it would not change its dates following the French Open's decision, which it supported. We will be back shortly after the Sports Roundup. That's all the news we had for you tonight. Many thanks for tuning in. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe, like, share, and click on the notifications bell to stay up to date with the latest happenings locally and globally. From myself, Salima Shumwe-Fileni, and the entire Nampa crew, it's good night.